It is Thursday night. It is 8 p.m. And that means it is time for your Big Gold Belt Wrestling podcast. And folks, we've been building into this show for quite a while. So tonight is going to be a show like no other. It is our WWE Arrives on Netflix kind of preview show, discussion, however you want to call it. That is the main factor tonight. WWE's impending arrival on Netflix. We're going to get into all that. On the flip side of the coin, AEW showed up on Max, so we're going to get into that too, because wrestling is all over the streaming world. And I don't know how to get into this. We'll get into it later. We got something. I don't know. Are we going to cope? I don't know. Something of that sort, folks. Get ready. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast starts right now.
Big Gold Belt. Big Gold Belt. Big Gold Belt.
Hello, everybody. We are so glad you are here with us tonight for the Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. This is a big one that we have been ready for some time, so we will not waste a lot of time on introductions. I'm Will. Up here on the top right of the screen. Below me is Damian G. Down in the Lone Star State. To the left side of him is the Giant Crab Jamal. And across from me on the upper left is Silly Celis. We are all here tonight to get in some wrestling talk. So, guys, how are you doing? First of all, Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And then shout out to those in New Orleans, Las Vegas, anywhere of these natural disasters for the last couple of weeks, or a couple of days, rather, a couple of hours. Just shout out to you. Hope you all are doing well as best as you can for those that are going through this tragedy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Keeping people in our thoughts as we start the new year. Things are crazy out there. Not how we want to be starting 2025, but we're here to take, hopefully take minds off things for a bit, talk some wrestling, all that good stuff. So we've been waiting for this one for a while, and I almost forgot how long this has been in the works when I was pulling notes together for the night and seeing what's happening with this. It was all the way back, apparently, in January 23rd of 2024 when we got the word that Netflix would be getting Monday Night Raw. So this has been coming for almost an entire year. I thought it was more like, after WrestleMania in the summer, but no, it has been a while. It has been almost a full calendar year that we've been waiting for this. And then this Monday, January 6th, it will happen. Raw will debut on Netflix, streaming live each and every week for the foreseeable future is how it's going to go down. And, I guess before we go any further, now that it's here, now that it's happening, last week we talked about the vibe check. We talked about that AEW show. How are we feeling about this? Raw's streaming future as a streaming property exclusively, where that's the only way you're going to be able to see it is on Netflix. Damian, what do you think?
I think since people already have 1 billion streaming services, this isn't really a big deal. I think about it as if when we all had cable back in 1993 or whatever year Raw debuted on the USA Network. We had cable, we had to pay for that, or our parents did. So it's not really that much different. I know I make this joke on the show a lot. I don't pay for Netflix anyway. I find my ways around it. So I will be swim sharking all over the internet trying to find free links. But as far as like the presentation and stuff, that's actually what I'm more looking forward to. Are we going to do the pomp and circumstance like they tried with the Fox debut a few years back? With that kind of stuff, are we going to have like this new Raw set? I don't know if they've debuted it or not, but that's what I'm more interested in more so than, it's streaming on Netflix, a thing I don't pay for. Moving on.
Giant Crab. If anything about this have you curious as far as like how they're going to roll this out? What I think what's the X factor here?
So the short answer to that question is the presentation. Usually when they move to a new network, you have that tweak the presentation a little bit. I don't know where they go from here because, of course, if you want to go back to the 90s, they had a really giant, the Titantron, which was a giant projector that they had to do a thing. And now that they've gone into the world of LED boards all over the place, they've really kind of minimized the projection with it, added some things like LED boards in the ring post or on the opposite side of the hurricane or on the announcer's desk or whatever. So on the ring itself, on the ring apron, on a couple sides of it. So they're always tweaking, they're always innovating, they're always trying to see what the presentation is. Now, I also don't have Netflix, let alone any streaming service at all. It'll be interesting to see because it is Netflix and it's not regulated by the FCC. This is not something that the government can go, you can't do that. It will be, how willing will WWE be able to push the envelope? Obviously, they can do whatever they want, but just because they can doesn't mean that they should. And it'll be interesting to see where that lies. Does Netflix have some kind of rating system outside of what the MPAA has for movies or what the FCC has for TV? Is it somewhere along those lines, or are they able to say like, well, this particular episode of Raw is going to be for mature audiences, or this particular episode of Raw, or rather this episode of Raw, as we get after 10 o'clock, hey, put the kids to bed. Raw is going to hit a little bit harder, be a little bit edgier.
The old war zone again.
Yep, exactly. Old war zone.
Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to see like the pudding contest or anything like that, but it does mean that like if they push the envelope from PG to PG-13, could they push the envelope from PG-13 to a soft rated R? So yeah, what does that look like? What will that look like? That'd be interesting. And we've already seen the new logo that they've kind of tweaked. And of course, a new set design would probably go right behind that as well. The one last thing about Netflix itself, this reminds me of when Howard Stern left radio and went to satellite.
Good point.
It's not that it has to be inherently a bad thing, but make no mistake about it. If it were about the audience, he cut his audience by 2/3 and took the money and went behind the paywall.
Yep.
Now, it's a little bit different than WWF popping up on cable for a show when they didn't have a weekly show. Saturday night's main event was every now and again. It was more based on the territories or where you can get your local contracts for. So it was the end of the territory days when Raw came through. And the super stations and stuff like that were around. So this is a little bit different because of the fact that even though it could be broadcasted live worldwide, we wouldn't necessarily feel that versus seeing WWF live coast to coast across the country. It doesn't matter to us if they're watching in Myanmar. Or to put it bluntly, when they had the Mike Tyson Jake Paul wrestling match, it wasn't. Did we feel that 60 million people were watching, or 100 million people, or 2 billion people, or whatever the number that Netflix claims it is?
The stream felt it, that's for sure.
Well, that's true, but it wasn't this groundswell of like emotion at the water cooler the next day because the water cooler died, 20 years ago. So I think culturally, it wouldn't necessarily be the needle mover that Raw was 30 years ago, but it does feel like there are going to be some people that say, hey, they're going to go and I'm going to watch them leave. And most will follow, but some people will not. And to be honest with you, when the NFL had their games on Christmas on Netflix, as a person that doesn't have Netflix, there were just no NFL games on. So, yeah, it's popular to say, well, you don't have Netflix, so what does it matter? But I don't think that they're doing the numbers that would suggest that they're doing better than any one TV show. Like I don't think Netflix's ratings are outpacing any cable television show at the top of cable television. Because I mean, like, if they did, they would have said that by now. They would have said, if this show had aired in the time slot where we released it, it would have beaten these shows that are on at the same time. I don't hear those statements from Netflix because that would be a hell of a statement to make.
Okay. They definitely keep their numbers close to the vest. That's
They
for sure.
absolutely keep their numbers close to the vest unless it's an unprecedentedly, stupidly large number, like the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight.
Right.
I don't know if they released numbers for the Christmas games on Netflix or not, but the point is that if they have an opportunity to go out there and drop their pants and shake it, they absolutely will, because that's what PR does.
Yeah.
And I don't see that happening where they can say that, like, they will make money on the concurrent viewers, but as far as like live in the traditional television sense, I don't see it being the big needle moving moment where you go, damn, where did Raw go? And I guarantee in 6 months there will be some fans that ask that, like, oh, Scoots.
All right, let me work the boss man, and the boss man is watching and coming into the chat with some stuff regarding
from his ivory tower.
This stuff. Yes. So they just had record numbers with Squid Games 2. Yes, Squid Games 2 just came out, so that's big for Netflix. The Beyonce halftime show on Christmas Day definitely drew some viewership.
And it's still on Netflix too, where you can view it now.
Yeah, they definitely, I remember in the week after, I saw numbers. It was obviously not Jake Paul, Tyson, gigantic, huge numbers like that, but I want to say they were like in the 20, 30 million range in there. Numbers where I was like immediately like, okay, the streams worked fine on Christmas. They weren't having the issues they had with the Paul Tyson fight. And the numbers were still for Christmas way above anything I can imagine Raw is going to be doing. So it gave me a lot more, feeling that, okay, Raw ain't going to have no trouble. I wasn't terribly worried about Raw from the beginning, but the NFL games on Christmas Day definitely were much smoother sailing than the Tyson and Paul fight was. Okay, here's before we go to Celis, here's a twist on that. Now, since AEW showed up on Max last night, they had their debut. They're doing their format a little bit differently with this. They're not exclusively on Max. They're doing cable, where they've always been on TNT and TBS, and they're doing the simulcast on Max, similar to how Peacock and NBC do their deal. So, Celis, let me hit you with this as we approach Raw going to Netflix exclusively. Do you think it's a better deal, Netflix with the exclusive as the only place you can see it? Or in some ways, I look at it as like, it might be the best of both worlds. You have your cable, and then you have your streaming simulcast at the same time, and you're getting both pieces of the pie. I don't know. What do you think about that?
So I'm going to answer that first by saying it's a monopoly event that could be very successful, but I want to go back a little bit and talk about two stories that Netflix has done and what WWE has done. So let's go back to 2005, right? Blockbuster Video is still fully functioning. You can go in there, rent your videos, things of that nature. At that time, rent your DVDs and come back going forth. However, Netflix was doing something at that time where you didn't have to leave your house. You had a plan where DVDs would come to your house, you put it back in your mailbox, and then it goes to wherever it goes, and you exchange that way. Versus start out one, but maybe you want to went 3 at a time, and then whenever you send one back, you do it again. And it was very successful with that. And then they said, let's put this on a streaming channel where that way you don't have to rent back and forth. You can just click a button to see what movie you want to watch. At the same time, WWE was trying, which we didn't know what this was at the time, try the $9.99 network where say, let's put all our premium live events here on this network and see how we can go. We could put the whole content of what we've done for our past pay-per-views, our past big time events, and you can watch it all at the same time. Okay, let's move to a bigger network like NBC where Peacock could then change these rights. But now what you're doing is merging a monopoly of a big time program like Raw with a big time platform like Netflix, and then going together to see how you do this premium live event together to stream this big show. Now, this is smart. This is not NFL. This is not NBA, which some of our streaming platforms are trying to get exclusive rights to it. Prime has got NBA now starting in 25-26, where they're going to have some exclusive games. Of course, Prime is going to have some exclusive games, and Netflix just did that. But this is something that's going to be continually every week that you see a big time sports entertainment promotion that if you have Netflix and you're around 8 o'clock on the Eastern time and you want to see it now, let's jump in the live and see it. And we went through Netflix trying to go through how it would be for big time fights, how it went through concerts, football games, even, big shows like we're dealing with Tom Brady, just to try to get all those bandwidth kinks out. Now you're dealing with this premium live event. However, this is where it's going to be interesting to see. Now, once again, Netflix is a premium live station. are we going to see Raw feel like a premium live event every week? Or is it going to be what we're seeing on cable for the past several years or 30 plus years and see like a soap opera type where a storyline continues more and more? Because you do have it where you have your stars, your HBOs, they have their weekly episodic shows that drop every single week during that time. Are you going to treat Raw like that? Or are you going to treat Raw like a big time premium event that you got to see every week, even though you got your premium live events that's on Peacock and things of that nature? Once again, it's just going to be interesting to see how they build that up with those two merged together. Once again, I think it's going to be a monopolizing event where it's going to be something that you're going to see a trend where other people are going to try to follow if it's going to do that well.
Okay. All right. So to kind of answer that, we'll get into what they're doing on the show, what we know so far. This first episode is, we were talking about this for a long time, that they're going to have, this is practically going to be WrestleMania, this first episode.
It is.
This is all hands on deck. They're going to play any card they can possibly play. Hell, we talk about Royal Rumble being the start of WrestleMania season. Scratch that this year. This Raw is the start of WrestleMania season.
Yep.
Hell, we're going to have the return to John Cena. I wouldn't be surprised if Becky Lynch shows up. Who knows who else? But if they got a card to play, they are playing it this Monday on Netflix. Now, going forward from there, I can't see a scenario where it's like that every week. You're doing this 52 weeks a year. It's got to still kind of be the regular show that it is eventually. Yep. But they're going to come out all guns blazing to try and make this the biggest show possible, the biggest splash they can possibly make, to get folks' attention for the move. I mean, how they've been promoting the hell out of this with these commercials and having it, putting it anywhere they can possibly put it to have folks know this is happening. So,
and this will be 3 hours, right? Every show is going to be 3 hours.
I would think at least.
Now, I know SmackDown's moved to 3 hours on USA, but is Netflix hosting this to 3 hours too?
I'm sure the first one is. I'm sure the first one is for sure. I think we'll kind of have to wait and see on that, because I think going forward, I think these first ones, they're going to have so much damn stuff trying to fit in. 3 hours probably ain't going to be enough. Now, once we get, say, a month from now, once we're like in February, we're in March, I don't know if it's necessarily 3 hours every week. Lord knows, I'm hoping it's not. Wouldn't mind it being like, this week it was 2.5 or 2:20 or something, with the idea that, they got some wiggle room here being it's a streaming product as opposed to a strict, we got to fit in a TV schedule product. That's kind of stuff I think that's up in the air. Who knows how they're going to handle that? But a mega event every week, I can't see a mega event every week. How do you keep that up when you're still doing, your pay-per-views on Peacock and, all that, your Royal Rumbles, your Elimination Chambers, etc. Let's look at this. Here's what we know. At this point, we got 4 matches laid out here. So, Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, tribal combat for the Ula Fala is on the table. We have Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, last woman standing match for the Women's World Championship. We have Drew McIntyre and Jey Uso in a heck of a grudge match there. And hell, another grudge match, probably even bigger, CM Punk and Seth Rollins on the table right now as far as matchups. Of those 4 matches, are the matches exciting to what they got booked here? Damian, what are you feeling about the matches themselves?
Well, I think you said it before, Will or Celis. It's a PLE almost at this rate, all hands on deck, right? So those 4 matches, we saw this with Saturday night's main event as well, where we had all these title matches for the first show. So for the first Netflix show, why wouldn't they want to go all out and say, okay, let's look at our most popular people on our show, right? So obviously now Roman's over here on Netflix because they needed him over on Raw. So you got Rhea, who's probably the most over woman in WWE by almost like default. You got main event Jey Uso versus the biggest hater in all of WWE, Drew McIntyre. And then you got main event Jey Uso. Not main event Jey Uso. Despite his popularity, you got CM Punk, who, love him or hate him, has always been box office, and he's going up against the old guard's golden boy, if you paid attention to the promos from this past week. So it's going to pique interest. It's piqued my interest. So my question to most people are, and I'll bring it to y'all after we all answer this, who does this move hurt moving over to Netflix? beside the
Mhm.
people that don't want to pay the $7 or $10, whatever it is now. And we could talk about that later. But I've just been thinking about it as we all been talking, like, what if someone finally just says no, right? So this is the show that's going to try to get them in. And then it's like, well, let's see what you do from here. We said the same thing for NXT on the CW. We said, we got to wait and see after those first couple episodes. And now it's like, all right, star-studded event, PLE, lights, camera, action.
Yep.
Then what? So those are my things that I'm really thinking about.
All right, real quick. The boss man says it's built like an adult takeover.
Exactly.
Those 4 matches, yeah, I can kind of see that. And of course, since it is Monday Night Raw, there's going to be a lot of stuff that is non-matches in the mix here too. So keep that in mind.
And that's where my point will come in too. If you don't mind me jumping in here, the matches I think will do what they need to do, but I think it's the storylines, it's the promos that's going to build how this show is going to be like. So, for example, let's say with the Roman versus Solo Sikoa match, what if that opened the show? That can set the tone of who you will come after for storyline purposes, for promo purposes, that can build up the remaining of the show. And I don't know if you or who you choose to open the match. That's just up for a minor discussion. But I think it has to do with the storyline. Like, to me, I'm most interested of how they're going to book Cena, or the promo that Cena's going to build in to see how this is going to go for his retirement tour. Stuff like that is what I'm interested in, to see who comes out. Is there going to be promo segments to help build up what's going to continue on to next week? Even Cody Rhodes is going to be showing up. What is he going to do? It's not a match per se, but are you going to build something not just for the Royal Rumble, not just for WrestleMania, but what's coming for this next Raw for us one to come in?
Yeah, 100%. You have, number one, they're building towards the Royal Rumble. You have John Cena's retirement tour, part 1. And then you have, will The Rock be a part of this in any way?
Yes.
Considering that Tribal Combat is slated to be on the show, probably main event the show, because ending with The Rock is probably something that you would want to do, sprinkling in those seeds towards the Rumble and eventually WrestleMania. And then, when does Pentagon Jr.
That's what I was gonna say.
Actually debut? When does that happen? Will we see any NXT call-ups that could happen? Will we see our first declaration into the Royal Rumble match itself? So there are a thing, and of course it's in Los Angeles. It's in the Clippers' new stadium that just opened, and that stadium has some interesting bells and whistles too that could enhance the product. Obviously for those in the stands, but for those in the at home. It's in Los Angeles or Inglewood, and in a major market city. It's a big thing. And that's also a thing, too. It being in Los Angeles, how many Hollywood stars are going to show up, whether they're promoting Netflix stuff or not? Netflix obviously has stuff coming down the pipeline that people may not know about. And, oh, my God, there's that person or Celebrity X or whoever doing things because now they're in bed with Netflix for this next movie. Let's get out there and get, WWE fans, out in front of it. I can see a lot of that stuff happening. And then, of course, it's the presentation of Netflix itself. It's not WWE Network 2.0. There may be a lot of people that don't even know how to find what they're looking for other than Raw, or other than the front page news. Raw is live. SmackDown is, tape delayed, or here's where NXT looks like, or whatever it is. I don't know what the Netflix suite looks like. But if you've never navigated it before, they may have to hold your hand through that on screen. So I definitely anticipate somebody on their phone or on their tablet, actively perusing Netflix. And then, of course, that's the first show, which sets up the second show. And, of course, it's not, the first show is important, but the second show is more important because we would need to see how they keep the ball rolling, especially since the Royal Rumble is in a month.
Here's someone. We mentioned Pentagon Jr. and since they're teasing that like anything. Hell, they got to the point that they showed the outline of the mask. So I think I like the idea that they went like, look, we're just gonna tell you, it's him. It's him. We ain't BSing no more. It's him. If he shows up Monday, and I think he will, I think they're going to want like a surprise like that. That's like a out of the box, someone you've never seen there before thing that's beyond just an NXT call up. And he would fit that, someone completely new to the mix. If he shows up Monday, what do you do with it? How do you do it?
Was there a segment on this past week's Raw where Ray was challenging the New Day and he's got to find like some mystery partner that's not part of the
mystery partner? I didn't catch that part.
I didn't hear it either, but that could happen though. It could happen.
The way the New Day was cutting the promo on the LWO, like, Ray, who else you really gonna get? You know, hat guy, mask guy. So we might get a new mask guy. If you're following typical old school WWE booking, we're gonna put the Latinos with the Latinos. But aside from that, maybe an enhancement squash. That's how you debut him, like back in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
Use enhancement talents.
That's what I would do. I would just have him show up and kill somebody. Make it very quick and just shock and awe. Nothing long, nothing involved. Yep. I'm assuming he'll have some like crazy entrance. Have him just show up and it's like, oh damn, Pentagon's here. Hell, make it Lucha Underground style back when he was just snapping arms, and that's it. That's what I'm thinking needs to happen to kind of get the fire lit for Pentagon to be here, because you need that version. Because if you remember back when Pete Dunne was in NXT doing the finger snap things, how the crowd would react at the sound. So just imagine Penta doing the arm snap thing on Netflix. And people are just like, ooh, thinking it's, legitimate, because people are going to tune in and sometimes think it's a shoot. That should generate buzz. But y'all said something also that made me think he's more presentation than he is performer in ring now because of the injuries and the age and such like that. So he brings a lot of energy when he comes in with the Cero Miedo, with the histrionics, all that. Perfectly built for sports entertainment, even though now we call it wrestling. So I think just having him kill somebody, like you said, Will, is the perfect way to bring him in if you're not going to do the Rey Mysterio bit. Our editor-in-chief is like sacrificing the Miz to him right out of the gate.
Not our first ballot Hall of Famer. Not our first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sacrifice Karrion Kross. There you go.
Yeah. I want to work in Cupcake here from YouTube. I'm 62 years young, and I have watched wrestling since the age of 5. I refuse to pay for Netflix. I am sure you are not alone, and that's why they are keeping SmackDown on
Don't do it, Cupcake. Don't do it. Don't give in.
They got NXT on the CW. Yep. It's not like they're moving everything in the world to Netflix. They're being smart about that. But they are getting the flagship show, if you want to call Raw the flagship show.
But wait, Cupcake, if they give you a promo offer where you get like 7 or 14 days free, you might want to try it just for money.
Don't do it, Cupcake.
I'm just saying, if it's free.
Oh, man. All right. We're kind of at around halftime here. So I think let's do the halftime break. Let's come back. We got to talk about AEW. We got to do our WWE IDs. Let's come out, switch gears. Let's do WWE ID. Then we can talk about AEW on Max. And then we'll see about if there's something we need to cope with out there in this whole mix of things that's going on. So, folks, there's a lot going on. It is a crazy night. Thanks for being here with us. We'll be back right after this. Stay with us. Your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast is coming back in a sec.
Looking to get your brand in front of people who eat, sleep, and breathe entertainment? Big Gold Belt Media is the place to be. We're all about reporting on movies, TV shows, conventions, and everything in between. And we want your brand to be a part of the action. Partnering with us means your sponsorships get featured right in the midst of our content. Plus, we're going to hype you up on all of our social media, connecting you with an audience that loves discovering new things from trusted voices in entertainment. We're easy to find. Just look for us on Big Gold Belt on all your social media platforms. Don't wait, reach out today, and let's start building something amazing together. Your spotlight is waiting here at Big Gold Belt Media, BigGoldBelt.com.
Thanks for being with us here tonight, folks, on your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. After our halftime break, we've been taking a look at the WWE ID program and the latest signees that they're locking up for 2025 and going forward. So here's Giant Crab with this week's WWE ID Spotlight.
And this week, we're going to spotlight a guy that's been a mainstay of Creative Pro Wrestling. Originally part of the Shook Crew with Barbie Orlando and Max Caster. And this is Bryce Donovan, a guy that I've seen, more than a few times up north, big guy in Creative Pro, big guy in Limitless, big guy in Beyond. And he's a big guy. Kind of reminds me of You have Big Cass, W. Morrissey, whatever you want to go by. He's in that same vein. Kind of a tall, lanky guy, but hits pretty interesting combination of moves. I think that trained by Brian Myers in the Creative Pro system, he's definitely not your run of the mill. Oh, he's over 6'6", so that must mean that he's going to just maul you. Like, no, you can actually definitely put some moves together. Definitely put a different combination together and uses the size effectively. One of the matches that I saw over the weekend that was pretty great was, and I hate to admit it, Chris Statlander versus Bryce Donovan from the Beyond Show on New Year's Eve was actually pretty damn good. That was a hell of a match, and he's had some other ones recently. It was Black Label, no, BIP. Shook Crew, which is him and Bobby Orlando. They had a hell of a match mid-December, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I get what they're going with. Definitely in the Donovan Dijak kind of a range.
That's a good description. Watching this sizzle reel right now, there's a lot of big man throwing people around spots going on.
Big man throwing people around, but not in the 80s kind of a way of a big man throwing somebody around. And also the people that he's throwing around aren't exactly small either in that sizzle reel that you see on his Twitter. But it's I see what they're going for with him. He definitely has the size, maybe not necessarily the size, lengthwise, maybe not necessarily the girth-wise, but they have a guy like Dijak that's super creative, and they have a guy like they're bringing in Bryce Donovan, who is a hell of an athlete and pretty damn creative. And anybody that's come out of Creative Pro in Long Island, that they definitely have the character development down. So not surprised there. So one of the things that is, of course, interesting, because I want to see these guys in action, not just from what I remember before, but what the maturation process is after the WWE ID product starts. And you get to see that January 12th when Full Impact Pro down in Clearwater, Florida, has their WWE ID showcase match, Bryce Donovan versus Freedom Ramsey down there in Clearwater. So we'll definitely talk about that a little bit later. Check their Twitter, Full Impact Pro or WWE ID. But the bottom line is that Gabe's going to get him right. It'll be interesting to see what the end goal is for a lot of these guys. But Bryce Donovan, WWE ID'd him. And so we had to take a little bit of a deeper dive. And that's the spotlight for this week.
There you go. At Bryce D. Shook on the Twitter machine is where you can find him at. Has the sizzle reel pinned to the top, like we've been telling these guys to do.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Lots of big moves on there. He's definitely got his act together for lots of black hole slams and choke slams. And
I like that. I like that twisting sidewalk slam he does.
Yeah. Dude can move.
Clean.
I am impressed. All right. Let's see here. We were talking so much about the Netflix deal. Let's talk about AEW and their Max debut last night. I see their New Year's show, their first time with a simulcast on Max. And it was interesting because I was looking at both yesterday. I made a point of I want to pull up Netflix and see how they're promoting Raw on there, and pull up Max and see how they're promoting AEW on there. And you pull up Netflix, you got to page down a little bit, but they got on that front page, they got Raw on there with a reminder button and everything. So you can be notified come Monday. Now I'm guessing come Monday, shoot, that front page is probably just going to be plastered completely. I wouldn't be surprised this weekend if they amp it up more. When I went on Max, you go on there and they're promoting whatever, HBO stuff they're promoting on there. But I definitely had to dig a bit more to find AEW and find where they had the AEW stuff. Now, that said, once it became 8:00 Eastern and the show was on and simulcasting live, I logged back in, boom, front and center, AEW live on right now. You couldn't miss it. It was splashed across the entire front page. So once it was game time, they definitely made it. You couldn't miss it. You were going to find the darn. Outside of that, though, it was you had to dig a little bit to find the AEW section on that. So I don't know. Now people watch. Did any of y'all watch last night? Any of the show?
I peeked
Did
at it.
not. Did not.
I peeked at it.
Okay, now were we watching via cable or via the new streaming setup? So we got different ways.
It was actually via a cable account streaming.
Okay.
Got it. Now I will say this, Will. I was home because I got back a flight yesterday, came from my town, Charlotte. I was home and I did the same thing you do. I said, oh, what's on Max? I did not see anything dealing with AEW, but soon as 8 o'clock hit, it flashed it right on. It was like, do I want to watch it or do I not? And I chose not to watch it, but it was just interesting how you just described it perfectly, how much promotion you're building for this, because I know similar to what they do with TNT being a part of Max and with basketball, they put that right at the top where it shows different live games that are going on now that you can watch on, Max via, TNT or how they want to set it up, but it was just interesting. I thought that AEW didn't get that same advertisement moving forward, which was interesting because I think people will still be keen more watching on a cable-like setup versus just straight on Max.
Yeah.
I wonder if that level of advertisement is something that AEW would have to still pay for versus Netflix, which bought the rights to distribute Raw full stop. They bought the rights. They basically transferred over the WWE network. This isn't some, piecemeal thing where we'll give you Dynamite Live or, whatever, pay-per-views, and nothing's changed. And I don't know if Collision is a part of that deal as well, but
yeah, it is.
Okay,
Collision will be simulcast also. Yeah,
as it should be. But now it's still to the point of like, well, there's so much other stuff on the AEW or on Max rather that I wonder if that's just part of like the whole thing. Well, if you really want to pay for the front page at this particular time, then you gotta pay up a little bit more versus Netflix, which is just like, oh no, we own it, so we're going to put it everywhere we can.
Yeah, Netflix is definitely rolling out the full court press of they want to make sure everyone in the world knows they have that thing, and if anything, they're going to have to maybe stumble out of their way to not watch it. Have to page past it however many times. That's going to be the thing on Monday night. Is like, how darn big are they going to make that banner on Netflix? Now, here's something I didn't think of. That who is this? Will 8400. Not will be. X will 8400 says Prime had it on its front page. And that's something I didn't think of. You can have your subscription through Amazon Prime and have that be your gateway in. So that's a whole nother
Very
factor.
true. Very
if
true.
You're having your subscriptions managed by another service, then that's a whole nother way you're coming at it to get these things. So that's a wild card I didn't even think of there. So yeah, interesting. Now, when I was doing all that digging around yesterday, part of what I wanted to see is, because part of the AEW deal with Max is, okay, yeah, they're doing the simulcast, but this is also going to be their first chance to have some of their catalog on a streaming service that they never had before. So I dug around and looked for some of that, and they definitely have an AEW area, and they have what they have right now. At least it's like older stuff. So like Dynamite from 2019, like the first Dynamite.
First Dynamite, yep.
Yeah, I think that and like maybe all the ones up through December of 2019 were up there. And then the pay-per-views from 2019 were up there. And then they also had some of the recent episodes of Dynamite, but it's not like the entire Dynamite catalog was up there or all the episodes of Collision. They're clearly going to add stuff, but they had like, your first taste of what's on. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're outside of the US, if you're over in the UK or in Canada, anywhere outside of the US, Netflix absorbed WWE Network. So that's a whole nother factor there where it's like Netflix is your complete one-stop shop. So using some services to figure out how this was working, I was like, okay, I want to see this now. How's Netflix look if you're over in the UK? So same situation. I had to do a bit of digging. It wasn't front and center, but once I went in there and did a search for WWE, boom, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, they have the WWE pay-per-views on there. And it looked like it was pretty darn complete as far as the pay-per-views went. Now, what they didn't have compared to WWE Network, I did a search for WCW. They ain't got a damn WCW pay-per-view on there to save your life. So if you're looking for that, they did not have that. They had episodes of Raw, but it was very scattered. It was definitely not like they're adding everything. But if anything, I think my surprise was they had more than I expected. Because I had heard a lot of rumors that Netflix was like, We ain't adding all that damn stuff. We ain't worried about all that. This is Netflix. And if you're not on Netflix, if you ain't watching something on Netflix, they're gonna yank that off that catalog fast. They don't let stuff just sit on there. But they got the WWE pay-per-views. So hopefully they're going to add more. Obviously, if you're in the US, this doesn't apply because Peacock is still the home for the network archives. But my assumption is the end game, once the Peacock deal is up, I'm sure they want everything on Netflix.
And when is that Peacock deal up? Do we know?
End of next year. I think it's through 2025, I think.
Because I didn't even think about that. Having everything on Netflix as a one-stop shop is huge. Yeah. So
that's how it is the rest of the world now.
Yeah, so. And that's I kind of like that idea, but once again, I know they got to go through what the Peacock deal is, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it ends up there. So clearly, Max is the home for AEW. Netflix / Peacock is your streaming home for WWE. But yeah, I don't know. It's just interesting. Now, I don't know. Do we want to talk any more about the streaming stuff? Are we done? Are we had enough streaming this far into the night? I think
because I'm not signing up for any of that shit. But I guess the real question is like, if you are doing a thing and if you already have the service, then cool. If you don't have the service, I'm really more interested in that. Obviously, Cupcake has put their foot down and said, "No, it's not going to happen." And good for you, stand-up business, Cupcake. But if you don't have Netflix, or if you don't have Max, or Peacock, or New Japan World, or any of the stuff, and you've just watched everything in one level. Let's say that maybe there's a Twitch stream or a YouTube stream or something like that where the barrier to watch it was low or free. Now that the thing's behind a paywall, and we joke about the paywall of honor all the time, but realistically, this is another paywall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Does that deter you from watching it, or are you just willing to let it go? And it'd be interesting to see how many of those people would do that. And yes, I did look up the numbers, like, oh yeah, Squid Games made, had 60 million views or something like that. But was it 60 million views within the first hour? Or was it 60 million views in the period where they collected that information? That's, obviously not how TV works. Of course, a show can have 50 million views on DVR, but that's not what people care about. So it will be interesting to see what success looks like for WWE on Netflix and AEW on Max. But now the question is, and I'll pose this to you. Let's say that you have all of them, and that's fine. How does this change the pay-per-view structure? Mm-hmm. Because for AEW, it's still $50.
Right. That ain't changed yet.
Right. Nope. For WWE, it's still the premium live event structure, and I don't know where that's going to be. If that's on Netflix or Peacock or both.
Peacock for now. Peacock's retained all its stuff for the moment.
Okay.
In the US.
Right. So then, does that change the way that you do a thing? Because maybe you didn't have Peacock and you definitely had Netflix, and now you needed to watch the Rumble.
Right.
Are you willing to commit more to the service? And then, of course, this will all be changed at the end of next year anyway, when the Peacock deal is up. So, just kind of like, how committed are you to the streaming thing as a fan, basically?
Let me ask this, Crab, because you just said something earlier that made me think about this. Because I know for NFL, when it was on Netflix for Christmas time, once it was live and it was done, you couldn't rewatch it. For Raw, because it's a weekly episode show, can you rewatch it? Let's say, for example, I'm not getting home to 10 o'clock and I can't DVR Netflix. Can I start it from the beginning, or do I have to wait till it ends and I can rewatch it later at 11 or 12 o'clock and that will help to the views? Or is it only going to be you got to catch it while it's live, or you won't catch it at all?
Well, being they're putting up the old episodes, I'm assuming they will be on there. Now, here's the other flip side of that. AEW last night, here's how they handled it. Mm-hmm. AEW was on there, it was on Max. As soon as it was done, I was seeing reports of like within 20 minutes, they had it up and ready. So it was there. It wasn't immediate, but it was like within 20, 25 minutes. Dynamite was up there last night, available to watch on Max. So I'm guessing they will do the same thing on Netflix. I can't imagine they wouldn't, being they're gonna have the old episodes there. So if you're going to have the archives, since they have the rights to Raw, that's why they had to pull it off Peacock, all those episodes.
Yeah.
I would imagine they are. But yeah, I think it's gonna be Monday's. We're gonna learn a lot Monday as far as how this all works and how Peacock, like with the pay-per-views, usually they don't usually show up till the next day.
Yep.
There's a lag.
Yeah.
Old WWE Network, it was like instant. You could rewind and whatever.
Yep.
Peacock, it's always like the next morning they show up. If you
So
come home that night, they're not up there yet.
I wonder what that looks like for people on the West Coast or in a time zone that's not Eastern, because if you're watching it live in the Eastern time zone, it's 3 hours.
Yeah.
If you're watching it as it premieres on the West Coast, can you just DVR the show, for lack of a better phrase, and watch and skip through the commercials?
Yeah,
because the show will have aired by the time it's 8 o'clock on the West Coast, assuming that you can't watch it live at 5 p.m.
Yeah,
but remember, the show would just air traditionally at a specific time. So does that mean that the show is going to be live coast to coast with the ability to, or will it premiere at 8 p.m. Pacific time or later? And you can just go, well, it's just premiered, so I can watch this 3-hour show in an hour and 58 because of the fact that I'm not going to see commercials.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I think to answer your question, Crab, that's going to determine with the paywall how people are going to respect this type of thing, because you have to see, or we got to wait and see what features are going to be going with this live on Netflix versus, what you would do on cable. It's going to be interesting to see.
What I'm curious about is if Netflix has offered we were talking about all percentages off. It's $2 for this month. Like, I'm surprised I haven't seen more of that for WWE fans, who are sheepish potentially of joining Netflix that may not be a part of it.
I would say this: if they don't get the numbers they want, if they don't see a spike, that's when you roll that out. Right now they're just going with the full court press and trying to get whoever they can, full freight, and this is how much you got, especially with the NFL on there right now. So I'm sure they're thinking, hey, we got all this stuff going. We got the NFL going. We're going to have WWE. Don't make any deals right now. Make people sign up for what it is. But if things start getting, they're not getting the response they want, then you start throwing some offers out there, I would think. All right. That'd be my theory. When you get the NFL and WWE, that's a lot. That's some big hitters to have.
Is it live worldwide on Netflix?
I think so. Yeah. The impression I've gotten is it's going to be, and then the flip side out will be come March, when Raw is over in the UK, it will be live and it will air here. You'll be able to see it as it's happening there. So middle of the afternoon and all.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's what my assumption is. I think they're going to have that replay, available as soon as they can get it up there. That, if you want to watch it at 8 o'clock, but that day, it was 3 in the afternoon when they know people are going to be working, not home and kids are in school. Yeah. I would assume they're going to have those available as soon as they can.
Yeah. But also just as important is that 8 p.m. in London is, 3 o'clock here, but it's also noon in Los Angeles. So that's definitely you're going to alienate your largest audience, but also there's 150 million Mexicans that watch it, and there's a bunch of Canadians that watch. So all of North America is kind of within that same 4 to 5 hour time zone window, and even though we're only talking about a few times a year, and there's one thing that we haven't mentioned. I wonder if they're going to cover non-Raw other WWE events, like if there is, because they do the big holiday show at Madison Square Garden. There's usually a camera around because something interesting happens. But I wonder if they're going to have some of those things still happening. I know obviously Saturday night's main event will still happen, and of course SmackDown's going to be on USA Network for now. But I wonder if they're going to add something else to the Netflix thing live instead of it just being a bunch of catalogs and of course Raw. Are they getting anything other than that?
Yeah, at this point it's exclusive for Raw in the US, but worldwide they getting everything. They getting the whole WWE network. The network shut down. We got to work Cupcake back in here because Cupcake is throwing us a little something extra here to start the new year. We do appreciate that. Thank you so much, Cupcake. Always home to watch Raw at 8 p.m. Still view pay-per-view via cable like the show. So old school cable, the way it used to be with the cable through the wall and the old pay-per-view system. That all that still exists. All
Yeah.
that still exists. I mean, hell, for SmackDown on Friday, you're still going to be good with able to, watch via cable. That's why
Wait. Let me ask this question to Cupcake. Cupcake, do you
Yeah,
still have your scrambler from back in the day?
Okay,
Hey,
wait.
because
Wait a minute.
I mean,
That's
'cause
not-
that's how we really used to watch
Wait a
the
minute,
stuff
hold
on
up.
the
A
pay
hot
per view.
box, man.
That's
No,
not
Yes,
rude.
yes.
I think we all went through that phase of the cable hot box at one point or another.
Or went to somebody's house that had it.
Oh yes, those were a favorite in the neighborhood. The folks who had the hot box deal.
So to what Crab was saying about potentially, specific things for Netflix, Peacock does that already now with vignettes or interviews that are strictly for Peacock premium viewers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do have some specific Netflix stuff for just Netflix. Hey, this is a Netflix exclusive. This match was at Madison Square Garden, even though it was a non-televised event. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Cupcake letting us she is on the up and up. He or she.
Ah,
We do not know.
It's
Good.
okay.
On the
It's
up and
okay.
up, keeping it
Cupcake's a good
legit.
egg.
There you go.
We
There
listen,
you go.
we don't judge.
Yeah.
There we go. Good times, good times. All right. Well, we'll see what happens Monday.
Yeah.
Enough about Raw and streaming and all that stuff. It's going to be a new world on Monday, and we'll see what
Right.
happens with that and the streaming wrestling world throughout 2025, since that's what all this is headed to. All right, we got to talk about this because people have been talking about this since it happened last night, and I do not know quite what to even feel about this, but this is so just out of nowhere. So, as we saw last weekend at AEW World's End, the show ended with the return of Adam Copeland, formerly known as Edge, and Dynamite comes on last night for their Max debut, and we're immediately getting hit over the head with Adam Copeland, now known as Cope. And it was like, what? Excuse me? And then by the time the main event come, it was rated R superstar Cope. And they said that name. I want to say Excalibur may have dropped that name at least 50 times during that main event. They hammered that thing like the old days, like when old crazy man Vince would change someone's name when they came to WWE and just hammer and hammer and hammer the name change of something. If someone's now Big Boss Man or something like that. It's like, I don't know. He's now Cope.
I don't know if that's worse, Cope or rated FTR.
Oh.
Yeah, that's yeah.
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 See, I liked it at first. Oh, rated FTR sounds cool, but now I'm thinking you're right. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah, it just doesn't. What does that even mean?
yeah.
Like they're rated FTR. Okay.
So they rated themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that means, but Cope is. I mean, it's his name. It doesn't. It's dumb, but there's other issues with AEW, let alone that. But the biggest thing is, aside from this Cope business, does anybody care that Wrestle Kingdom's this weekend?
Oh yeah, double shows.
Shit. So that gives you that's a different problem, and I mean it's the 4th and the 5th, which is Saturday and Sunday, and they're going to air. It's going to air the night of the 3rd live in the U.S. And the night of the 4th live in the U.S. But it's Kenny Omega's first match back. You have Zack Sabre Jr. versus Ricochet again. The 4-way for the International Women's Cup. And I really feel like Mercedes versus Mina Shirakawa, which should be interesting. And then on Wrestle Kingdom itself, Takeshita, your guy Will versus Shingo Takagi for a winner-take-all title match.
Nice.
There are things on the show that are definitely interesting and worth watching at a reasonable hour, but it just really feels buried under the weight of, streaming services, Netflix, the Royal Rumble, and stuff like that. And it really didn't used to be that way. Like Wrestle Kingdom used to be, up until I don't know when, but used to be the premier event for Japan.
Japanese WrestleMania.
Right.
3-4 years ago, that was like one of our biggest topics that we talked about.
We literally were covering it a couple years back, so that tells
Right.
you enough right there.
Yeah.
And
since COVID, it's never been the same. It's never been the same since before
Right.
COVID times.
So is it like that? That's an interesting thing because it really just feels like, oh yeah, Wrestle Kingdom is happening. Okay, rated FTR. Yeah, that's great. It's
Adam Copeland's Cope.
yeah, Cope. That's and
Cupcake
it's
says
just,
Cope is corny.
That's it.
Yeah.
Corny Cope. There you go.
Yeah.
Cornucopia. There you go.
I think
Oh,
that I think the thing that got me about it was just like I could see, you have John Moxley and they call him Mox as
Yeah.
a nickname, but they're not just calling him Mox. They did not change his name to Mox. He's John Moxley, and sometimes they call him Mox as a nickname thing. You keep him as Adam Copeland, and if you want to use Cope as a nickname, that's fine. But this straight just he's now known as Cope. Like, why? It's so forced. And
Yeah.
well, it's definitely
really
forced when Excalibur's mentioned it 73 times. I mean, when you know that you got to get it over, that's when it becomes, anti-hype.
Yeah.
When I woke up this morning, I swore it was a joke. I thought it was a joke. Like, oh, they're just messing around. And then when I saw the highlights and the replay, I said, oh, no. Is it because Copeland doesn't fit on a T-shirt? Is it because the name Copeland isn't marketable? But if Tony's trying to get the younger demographic, let's call Cope
51-year-old man named Cope just does not work.
No, and that's another thing too. So, and I have an abbreviation of my name. Like people always put abbreviation of my name, and it's natural for Cope. If it was something that was as natural for that, I think in his 51 years of living, and even private interviews, documentaries, and things of that nature, you would hear things with him more about Cope than it is about Edge or Adam.
Right.
You just hear Adam or Edge. You never heard Cope before, so it's like, where's this coming from? And it doesn't feel like we've said before. It just feels forced.
I just realized it's probably to mix in with Dash, Dax, Cash, Cope, like just on the marquee. Fit all those three names on one line.
That makes
to make it all singular.
But I do think that that's kind of like to your point, Celis. It's like it would be different if you came in and said like from henceforth I should be only addressed as Celis. Deal with it. And
Not
like,
natural.
no, I mean your name is Marcellus. We're respecting your mom. That's what we're going to call you. Like, no, hear me far and wide. My name is Celis the Great, first of his kind. You shall call me Celis or die. And it's just like, okay, I'm definitely not going to call you that now. I don't care how many T-shirts you printed. It doesn't make sense, and it's stupid now. Even though it would not have been if it just organically happened. And I think that AEW kind of shoots themselves in the foot sometimes where they have a nice organic moment that gets people talking, and then they bring it back. The thing that comes to mind immediately is Rick Ross. They had a good organic pop culture moment, and people are talking about Rick Ross on AEW, and then they bring it back 2 weeks later to kind of like recreate that same moment. They had Chris Statlander versus Mercedes, and that was a match that was really caught people by surprise for a number of different reasons. And then they do it again in the pay-per-view. And then you have like, oh, it's Dax, it's Cash, it's Cope. Cool. And now it's just like, nah, I'm Cope. Period.
Just
and
out of
it's
nowhere.
just like you had an opportunity to have a bunch of different organic, fun things that the people are willing to stick with. And then you just go, yep, buy the T-shirt. We got merch now.
It feels just so old WWF, WWE, where it's just suddenly someone was decided, you know what? You're no longer Demolition Smash. Now you're Repo Man. And that's just, that's it. It was one day you show up in a new costume with a new name, and that's it. It just happens
Stardust.
just like that. Exactly. Just, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
It is what it
is. It's just one of those things where it's just like AEW's got to get out of its own way sometimes and just let moments mature by itself naturally and organically. And if they can make some merch off of it, cool. And if they, and if the thing peters out, then cool. But like Sugar Dunkerton as Pineapple Pete is another just good example as I'm thinking of these things where it's just like that was a good moment. That shouldn't have not have happened. It was a moment, and then 6 months later, we're still going down that road, and good on Suge D, making his money off of it. But it's still to the point of like that was a moment. Just let the moment be the moment. And now it's turn it to a thing. It doesn't need. Not everything needs to be a thing.
No, don't try to force things. It
Don't
never
try
works.
to.
It never works, folks. We are at our hour. We are keeping this tight and organized tonight with the Star Show. So, as we head into 2025, this is your Big Gold Belt Wrestling Podcast. You can find us. Geez, let me run down all the things here. Let's start with the social medias at Big Gold Belt across the board, where it's Twitter, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, Big Gold Belt on all the platforms is where you can find us on social media. Of course, let's see, we're out streaming live Thursday nights, 8 p.m. We are about to be going on our January break that we take every year, but Thursdays at 8 is when you can find us. Hit that bell to be subscribed, get your notifications, because we're streaming on YouTube, streaming on Twitch, streaming on Twitter, X, however you want to call it these days. Wherever we can stream it live, we got it up there. A lot of people on the stream tonight. Thanks for joining us. This was a fun one tonight. Cupcake giving us a little something extra to start the year. Greatly appreciated, and so much. So, of course, this is Big Gold Belt Media. This is more than just wrestling, movies, comics, and more, as we like to say, as we head into 2025. I'm going to give it to you, Crab, this week. What are we watching? What's a recommendation or something on the letterbox that you set up or something?
Okay, so there are a couple movies that are coming out next weekend that I'm definitely interested in. There's a bunch of award movies that you will never have heard of until they get announced for Oscar consideration in February that are playing in theaters now. Nickel Boys is interesting. The Seed of the Burning Fig is another one that's interesting. Honora should be coming back. That's going to be an Oscar movie that you've never heard of. Emilia Perez is another Oscar movie that you've probably never heard of. So it's that time of year where we've gotten past the holiday movies and the major blockbusters, and then we're moved into, this kind of like award season. Well Go USA, shout out to them, because they are popping out a couple of movies that I definitely want to see. Harbin, a Korean movie about the occupation of Korea and Japan and the assassination attempt of the Japanese prime minister. That comes out this weekend. And then next weekend, you have Donnie Yen in a prosecutor, where, of course, he's a lawyer that's going to whoop all kinds of ass. And by ass, I mean justice. It's so well go, thanks for bringing those to America. So it's an interesting time for movies in general as we transition into like the award season. The Golden Globes is soon. And then, of course, the Oscars are usually in like March. So, if you're an Indiana Jones fan, I highly recommend Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It's a really fun game, and that it's the best Indiana Jones product that I've seen since, the third movie, because the last two movies weren't great, but it's a really good game. Troy Baker, who's done a lot of voice acting for most of the major games, especially for Sony, sounds like Harrison Ford. Like, damn, if I'm Harrison Ford, I'm very nervous. But yeah, no, Indiana Jones is the Great Circle. If you're a fan of the franchise, and if you're willing to sit through what a really good story that is, that's been a lot of fun playing through. So, that's just some quick things that's been happening.
There you go. Some movies, some gaming recommendations. Like we said, it's Big Gold Belt Media. We're more than just wrestling. It's wrestling, movies, comics, and more. All that kind of stuff. BigGoldBelt.com on the web. So between that and the social medias, Big Gold Belt, keep up with all the reviews because there's always something dropping. It's more than just wrestling. So we got you covered on entertainment across all your different formats, all your different genres and that stuff. So folks, thank you for joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun to kick off 2025. If you're staying up late for Wrestle Kingdom, be good, get some rest. Try to get some rest before or after. On Monday, we'll see what happens with Raw. We're heading into Rumble season. The fun does not stop. There's going to be a lot of wrestling happening going forward. So we hope you're here with us through 2025, and we'll keep breaking it down as we go through the year. So, folks, thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. And until then, watch some wrestling, and we'll talk to you later.
All I really need